The Legend of Zelda. It's my favorite Nintendo franchise, and ever since the original release on the NES in '85, they've been making them bigger and better. We all know the main games that set the standard for Zelda were A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, followed by Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64. Since Ocarina of Time's release, Zelda games have been more or less split into two, 2D and 3D, with 2D being the norm on handhelds and 3D on consoles. I want to rank the 3D Zeldas and create a tier list on the 3D journeys, discussing their strengths, weaknesses, and attempting to remain as objective as I can when talking about each respective title. I will not be referring to A Link Between Worlds, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, or Triforce Heroes as 3D, because they're 2D with 3D graphics. An argument could be made that these games are 3D, they're only so with a selective Z-axis. And if I can't do this with my bow and arrow, then it ain't 3D. The main metrics I will be using to compare and rank the games are exploration, combat, and conveyance, as these are all core components of the 3D Zeldas, and seeing which one has better what, we can determine what tier they go in. Speaking of which, these are the tiers for the 3D Zeldas: low tier, mid tier, high tier, and top tier. Also, I do want to point out, while of course this is all subjective, I try to remain as objective as I can. Ultimately, all Zelda games are really good, especially compared to most games. It's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're all good, but they're not all Winter Soldier good. And sometimes, you're gonna get a Thor 2. With all that in mind, folks, let's take a look at the 3D Legend of Zelda tier list. To be real, I haven't fully played through this game, mainly because I dread motion controls, but even after watching people play through it and reading up on it, this still sucks as a Zelda game. The main thing it has going for it is that it does have one of the more compelling plots in a Zelda, learning the origin of everything from the Master Sword to how Link, Zelda, and Ganon are destined to clash for eternity. But everything else is just kinda doo-doo. The combat is a chore every time you need to hold the Wiimote on a 75-degree angle so you can slice through an enemy opening. The novelty of that wears pretty thin pretty fast, and it's double hindered by the fact Wii Motion Plus just doesn't always work. Exploration and traveling in this game are also boring and meaningless. What purpose does flying on this big doofy bird serve when there's nothing to experience on the way? There's no enemies to fight mid-flight, you're always going towards a big glowing beacon, and I can't ride this thing at night? Overall, Skyward Sword isn't a bad game, but man, does it fall flat compared to other Zelda titles. There is no real exploration in this game, as it is for sure one of the more linear games of the 3D lineup. Not to say it's the only one, and it's fine from its narrative standpoint, but it does make for a poor Zelda experience. Combat, like I said before, is more tedious than fun. Even if the motion controls worked a little better, it would only be a quality of life improvement, as core combat is just bad. Conveyance is this game's strongest suit, as the pacing is super good and it tells a great origin story for the series, but the game is boring, so getting to those good story moments suck. Going from 2D to 3D isn't easy, but the Zelda series found great footing in Ocarina of Time. It streamlined its formula so players could get used to 3D gameplay, and they killed it. Now, does it make it a good Zelda? Yeah, it's fine. Ocarina of Time is pretty limited by the hardware it's on, which is the main source of a lot of its shortcomings. Aiming the bow is a nightmare, Z-targeting works only 70% of the time, and there's virtually no platforming. The 3DS version fixed a lot of the gameplay problems, but it doesn't deal with the fact that the game is inherently slow in almost every facet. It had to be in order to ease Zelda players at the time to a new 3D platform. Fighting isn't bad in this game, as L-targeting would set the standard for 3D combat. Link can attack vertically, horizontally, thrust, jump attack, spin attack, but it doesn't matter because you can just mash B, dodge once, wait, and then mash B again due to enemy designs being mediocre. And Ocarina of Time has fake exploration, going into caves or bombing rocks to holes net no real reward and are just filler. Rupees are meaningless in this game, yet they fill 80% of the chests outside of dungeons, and the other 20% are just hearts. Not pieces or containers, but the ones that heal you. The story in this game is a 3D rehash of A Link to the Past with some twists. Rather than pendants, you get stones. Rather than breaking the seal on maidens, you free sages. Neat. Link, Zelda, Ganon, Master Sword, Triforce, it's all there. For the first 3D Zelda, this game is a-okay. This is going to be the trend of the lower ranking Zeldas, is that they sacrificed good exploration for more cinematic storytelling. Nothing about moving or attempting to get in a new location is perfect in Ocarina of Time, but it does seem overtly clunky, and it's usually not worth the reward. The combat has some issues, but it's by no means bad. Sure, it has some waiting here and there, and there are times where a sword and shield enemy can block or has invincibility. The game does give you options to switch it up or bypass that. The cutscenes and progression is where this game truly shines, as conveyance, like Skyward Sword, is its strong suit. The cutscenes in this game are impactful, and it has some dope atmosphere. Play the 3DS version. Better graphics, better controls, more content. Twilight Princess isn't the game for me, but gosh dang does this game do a lot right to counterbalance how much it does wrong. I've only played the GameCube version, but off the bat I know the Wii U remaster just helps in a lot of ways. The main issue with this game is a lack of variety, or staleness in the variety, and I can't quite decide which. For example, outside the usual suspects, items are rarely used outside the dungeons you get them in, and if they are, it's just not fun. Wolf Link is cool, but the worst. He only exists as a means for the plot, and he does add that variety, but combat isn't the most fun due to the enemy designs around him being whack. It does have some of the best combat in the 3D series though, with Link learning his techniques from a ghost, which is cool, fighting on Epona is badass, and I wish Hyrule Field had more enemies to engage in that new style of horse combat to keep it fresh. Real talk, the only reason to play this game is the Ganon fight. It hands down has the best one to date. Puppet Zelda is a great callback to the Phantom Ganon fight, the Beast Ganon fight is dope and it makes fighting with Wolf Link fun for the one and only time. Fighting Ganon on Epona while Zelda shoots light arrows at him and while you try to knock him off his ghost horse is OD. And that Ganon sword fight? Please, the best Ganon fight. But a handful of Twilight Princess is tedious and monotonous, with some crazy backtracking. It's good, but misguided. Exploration is where this game struggles the most, but it is more rewarding than the titles below it. The world isn't completely fleshed out, and secrets just don't feel super impactful. Combat in this game is amazing. Enemies are engaging, Wolf Link is forgivable, and if it had better horse combat, it would have been perfect. The conveyance of Twilight Princess is weird. Its story isn't the best, but it is well paced and it has some pretty decent cutscenes. It also has a very immersive atmosphere. Play the Wii U remaster. It buffs everything. Now this is what I call a sequel. Honestly, I could talk about Majora's Mask for hours. It's my favorite 3D Zelda. So I won't do that and instead keep this part brief as to avoid excess gushing. Now let's first talk about the weaker stuff. Its pacing is terrible. The entire game up to actually entering Woodfall Temple is a complete drag, but then you beat the first temple, and then you start talking to the other villagers, and then you start to see all these little secrets that actually reward you. While saving the world is nothing new for Link, the atmosphere in this title is out of this world, literally and figuratively. It's so dark and hopeless. Townspeople are either oblivious, skeptical, or have completely given up, and only you can stop Skull Kid from hurling the fucking moon into this town, all while living the drama and interactions of all of the different characters within Termina. That's this whole game. Regret, failure, rage, sorrow, all these things surround Link each step of the way until giants punch the moon back into space. Combat and exploration play into this game's conveyance so well that it's crazy to think that this game was only made in 1 year. Now I know I said I was going to talk about the weaker stuff, but that's what this game does. It makes you think it's sluggish and weird, and then it obliterates your expectations by making you realize the monotony of routine is driven by personal purpose, and the player experiences that in real time. Exploration is whack in this game as the map isn't physically big. Time traveling is really what makes areas different and unique to explore. It all changes depending on what day you do what, and how you can access areas change depending on the mask that you wear. Combat is really good, as Deku, Goron, and Zoraling keep things fresh, and there are good enemy designs around them, and 4 out of 5 bosses are fun. I've already exploded about this game's conveyance, so the only thing I will say is that it diverts from the formula and truly feels unique. Better design using the Ocarina of Time engine, has a crazy amount to explore, and you'll never escape that feeling of dread while playing Majora's Mask. Play the 3DS version. Better graphics, better controls, more content. I'll be the first to admit that when I first saw this game, I was upset we didn't get a more realistic style Zelda, and I am for sure kicking myself in the ass for not believing one of my best friends that it was one of the best games ever. Crazy how people change. This game does so much for the series that I almost don't even know where to start. Toon Link is such a contrast to Link, and the cel-shaded cartoon style gives a level of expression to characters not seen in a Zelda before. Shit hits the fan off the bat when Link's sister gets kidnapped and you sail across the Great Sea to begin your adventure. Exploring and traveling was done so beautifully in this game. Treasure maps gave both traveling and exploration immediate meaning, all the while making sail fun and engaging, on top of adding enemies to fight and weather hazards to be cautious of mid-journey. The combat in Wind Waker has some of the best in the series. Visually, it all looks brilliant, with the sword swings being flashy and colorful. It's also ridiculously rewarding, as openings and advanced techniques have tiny cartoony quick times, and arpeggios to the beat of combat makes fighting rewarding, complicated, and engaging. That's this whole game. Engaging. I want to sail the dense yet desolate Hyrule. I want to kill shit, and I want to find treasure. While at first, exploring each island feels daunting, you're soon to find treasure maps, secret islands, and a peace of mind with the lax vibes of sailing, and from the sailing to the actual islands you visit, exploration never seems to get boring, and fast sailing in the HD remake really goes a long way, as well as shortening that Triforce quest. The combat is amazing, as developers had more options with more powerful hardware. Even using the grappling hook to steal a shield or sword and learning advanced counter techniques truly evolves Zelda's combat for the better. Conveyance is on full blast, as the art style is timeless, expressive, and the story truly feels like the aftermath of Ocarina of Time. While it's definitely the MacGuffin search Zelda typically is, all the characters are full of life and memorable. Damn, that HD remake. Honestly, you could play either the GameCube version or the Wii U version and you'd get the full experience, but I would recommend the Wii U version. So remember when I said that Majora's Mask was my favorite Zelda? Don't get me wrong, for your standard Zelda fare, it is. But Breath of the Wild is no run-of-the-mill Zelda. The point of Breath of the Wild was to go back to the roots of the original Zelda, to capture the spirit of what that game was about, exploring a new world. They nailed it. The physics-based engine and true open world drastically change how combat, exploration, and conveyance are all expressed, and I will argue that they've been drastically enhanced by this new style. Also, runes change the entire way items work, as you no longer really need to collect key items, but rather hunt and gather to find material for cooking and crafting. It has Skyward Sword meets Wind Waker graphics, everything is essentially executed perfectly, game design, game feel, sound design, art direction, storytelling, atmosphere, everything. Divine Beasts are dope and climactic, but not difficult by any means. The mini-bosses are tough, add variety, and create personal sub-goals. Shrines are a game changer, and while I haven't bought the DLC like the heretic I am, I know it's rad AF. Calamity Ganon is neat. Climbing and gliding feels natural to Hyrule, and it makes exploration fun and engaging by making sure the player is aware of their surroundings, conscious of their stamina, and constantly providing rewards both impactful to gameplay and story. Riding on horses is fast, and apparently having a motorcycle makes things faster. While gliding for the scenic view is usually my go-to for getting places, the fast travel is also done beautifully, with the Sheikah Towers being close to wherever you need to go, as well as being high up places for you to glide from in order to get to your destination in a timely manner. The combat changes are pretty crazy. You have multiple weapons, they break, you can throw them, there are different weapon types, bow types, arrow types, fuck it, a leaf. That all affects Link's options. Fury attack, bullet time, better horse combat, environmental kills, holy moly does this game have options. Nothing is perfect, as conveyance is Breath of the Wild's weakest point, yet it is still phenomenal. The big thing here is that the story is optional, and that's huge in a Zelda game. What it means now is that the player will feel like they're naturally supposed to be in this world without additional pressure of MacGuffin hunting in order to feel immersed. This is where the ambient atmosphere and expansive world come into play. Nothing about Breath of the Wild takes you out of the experience or slows down inherently. Now the plot, it's great. Waking up 100 years after sealing Ganon is cool. Finding out how the world got decimated by him and its impact is apparent. The Divine Beast gives player a goal that'll affect how they fight Ganon, and learning how Link impacted the lives of people is touching. The Switch and Wii U versions are literally the same game, so whatever one you have, just please play this game. Whew! That was a lot of Zelda, and I love me some Zelda. This isn't some end-all be-all list, but I do think it was fun examining what makes a Zelda game and critiquing the 3D lineup. As I said earlier, this is all subjective, with me trying to be as objective as I can when regarding these points. Just to show you, this is what our tier list ended up looking like, and this is a list of my favorites in order. You see that? Imagine if that was my list? That would be some shit. My goal here was just to start a discussion on what we value in some of our favorite series, and if we can be open-minded enough to critically look at all the game's strengths, and more importantly, their flaws. Zelda games have a crazy amount of nuance, and to summarize each of them in 2 minutes does not do them justice, so I really recommend you play them for yourself. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about one of my favorite series. If you want to let me know why you think my list is trash, go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll tell you why your opinion is trash. And if you want to hear me talk about other games that I also put into arbitrary categories, you can click on one of these videos here and subscribe if you want to see more. Deuces!